Hi, Barbie. Hi, Barbie.
Boiling it down to Barbie, tech trailblazer Carlotta Berry's secret sauce on getting young people interested in science and technology.
I had Barbie dolls, and my creative and curiosity came from designing new outfits for them or figuring out how to make my dream house or my Barbie car to go faster or look prettier. But I could still be an engineer because I was being creative and curious.
That curiosity led her to become an expert, a leader, and driving force in the field of STEM and robotics. Meet Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology professor of electrical and computer engineering, Carlotta Berry, on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast. Hello and welcome to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. I'm Gary Dick. Carlotta Berry noticed something when she first got to Rose-Hulman. There weren't very many minority students getting degrees in STEM fields, so Carlotta set out to do something about it, starting the Rosebud program at Rose, which has seen a dramatic increase in the number of women and minority students. And I'm pleased to be joined on the podcast this week by Dr. Carlotta Berry. She is a professor of electrical and computer engineering at Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology in Terre Haute, one of the country's great engineering schools. Also is very busy with a whole lot of other initiatives on campus that we're going to talk about as well. Carlotta, great to see you. How are you?
I am great. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I'm good. How are things in Terre Haute? You know, a lot of people know Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, but I don't think maybe as many people know the depth of the reputation that Rose has, nationally and globally. I know U.S. News and World Report repeatedly, year after year, ranks Rose as the top private engineering school in the nation. So it's quite a place if you want to be an engineer or in any related field, right?
Absolutely. In fact, I chose Rose-Hulman because of its ranking going on, I want to say about 20 years now. I knew I wanted to be an engineering educator, and I wanted to be one that had a student-centered focus where I wanted to grow tomorrow's engineers in an environment that was nurturing and not stressful like some engineering factories can be. So Rose-Hulman is the place to come to do that.
Well, your path to your role is an interesting one driven by, I know, a passion that stems from your time in growing up and being educated in the engineering, the STEM-related fields. And you've been recognized, we're going to talk about this, but in so many ways for the accomplishments you've had when it comes to engaging diverse groups of people, getting them engaged, women of color in STEM-related fields, and most recently, and this is very significant, Forbes listed you as a 50 over 50 award winner. That's quite an accomplishment.
Thank you so much. I was so surprised. And I think it was for my work through Noir STEMiness and getting more people engaged in STEM and STEAM by using robotics. But yeah, I couldn't believe it. I was shocked.
Well, now what are you going to do? Are you actually going to go to New York City to be a part of the program out there?
Yeah, so they're going to have a 30-50 summit because they also did 30 over 30. And the 30-50 summit is going to happen this fall. And then next March during International Women's Week, it's going to be in Abu Dhabi. So fingers crossed I get to go there.
Holy cow. Yeah, that's a long way from Terre Haute.
It is.
You are a trailblazer and very passionate about equity in STEM, as you say as well, which the A is for the arts, right?
It's absolutely for the arts.
For women of color, a co-director of the Rose Building Undergraduate Diversity or Rosebud program, right?
Yes, that's right.
Tell us what that is all about, the Rosebud program.
So when I arrived at Rose-Hulman in electrical and computer engineering, me and my colleague Deborah Walter noticed that some years at graduation, there would only be about 4 or 5 women or 4 or 5 Black or brown students who would go across the stage. And we wanted to do something to help those numbers. So we started a scholarship and professional development program, which we named Rosebud. And it was initially funded with a $600,000 grant from the National Science Foundation. And what we found is that it was so successful that we grew it to computer science and software engineering. And the school has now taken over for long-term sustainability of that program because it's not just about the scholarships, but it's about the networking, the professional development, the mentoring, and the sense of community. Those are the things that keep these students there. And Rose-Hulman, which started out as all male and in 95 became co-ed, has now grown to be about 25% women, partially due to that Rosebud program.
Talk about your interest increasing diversity in STEM or STEAM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math. I think if the numbers I saw are correct, 29%, less than 30% women representation, right, in those fields. Where did that passion to make a difference there, where did that come from?
It came from my time as a student at Georgia Tech. I had come from an all-women's liberal arts college, Spelman College in Atlanta. And so when I first arrived at Georgia Tech and I went to an engineering classroom, it was a little jarring, going from a classroom where most of my professors were women most of my classmates were women to being one of two or three. And what I discovered is I enjoyed engineering, but always being so isolated and not feeling a sense of community or belonging makes it a difficult journey. Engineering school can be hard already, but it makes it a little bit harder when you don't see any mentors or role models or feel that support network. So that's what made me decide I wanted to, one, become an engineering professor, and then once becoming a professor to start this program, because we want to see those diverse communities there because they create the best solutions to the world's problems, but we don't want to make it so hard for them to get there.
Have you had success, do you think? Do you think you are making a difference with your efforts there at Rose?
I do. I'm definitely seeing a difference in the number of women who have enrolled and graduated in electrical and computer engineering, and now also computer science and software engineering. Not quite as much with Black students or Hispanic students, but we're not going to give up. We'll keep working on it. It's just traction is a little bit slow, but you're right. Rose-Hulman has now met the national average for the number of women in engineering at our school, but we do know there are some schools that have 50% parity in engineering. So we have a way to go.
Where did your desire to be an engineer, where did that come from?
It came from me being in high school and really just wanting to be a high school math teacher. I loved math and science. I was going to be perfectly happy to teach high school calculus, which is the class I liked the most. And I had a mentor in a program called Inroads. It's a professional development program to help young people get ready for internships. And they said, why not consider engineering? Well, you're good at math and science. Why not consider engineering? They also said that making a teacher doesn't make a lot of money, but that's another story.
Yeah.
And I said, well, okay, I can consider engineering, but I don't know what it is. Engineers are trained conductors. And so I went to the library. I looked up engineering and said, that looks okay. I think I could do engineering. But I also wanted to still get my math degree so that if any point I wanted to go back to being a teacher, I had the math degree. So that's why I have 2 bachelor's degrees from Spelman and Georgia Tech, so that I could feed both of my loves. And now I do that as an engineering educator because I teach anyway.
Your path to getting your engineering degrees and getting to where you are now was not an easy one, right? From financial resources to just the fact of what we're talking about here, the limited number of women and women of color in engineering. Talk about that path and maybe some of the difficulties you encountered along the way.
It was difficult for several reasons. There's a lot of stereotype threat. There's a lot of preconceived notions about who should be an engineer and what an engineer looks like. So I had to battle that. You're exactly right. There were some financial concerns as well that affected my academics. I had to work 3 jobs at some point, which is completely not advisable in engineering school. Yeah. So because of that, I failed some classes and my grades suffered, which made it even more unrealistic when I decided with my 2.5 GPA that I was going to become an engineering professor. I think a lot of what kept me going forward is naivete and lack of knowledge. I did not realize how low the numbers were for women and people of color in engineering. I did not realize that my GPA was not a good one to go to grad school. So because of that, I just kept moving forward. Maybe if I had known more about some of the challenges when I started, it may have made me walk away, but I didn't. And so when I encountered those things, I was stubborn and kept moving forward.
In the process, you mentioned mentors earlier. Did you have mentors or people who were important in the process?
Honestly, no. I had someone ask me once who was my role model. I guess I can think back now. Mae Jemison may have been the only Black woman engineer that
Right.
I had ever heard of. But that may have been later in life, after college that I even was aware of Mae Jemison. Now we hear about Katherine Johnson and all those kind of people. But I think my first mentor I can really remember was the first Black engineering PhD I met. And I was already a working engineer at Ford Motor Company when I met him. He eventually became one of my professors at Wayne State. But that's really, really late.
Yeah.
I now mentor kids and college students in high school. A mentor would be ideal to start way earlier, but at the time I didn't know that. And so I was just kind of like the blind leading the blind, which made my journey way more difficult than it should have been.
Yeah. As you look at mentoring and the importance of mentoring now, how do you implement mentoring programs or mentoring students and others there at Rose?
I think authentic relationship is the key. Some of my students will say, I'm like their mom away from home. And I try to be like, no, I'm not your mom. I have one daughter. But what I will do is I end up giving advice about a lot of things that have nothing to do with engineering school, career, relationships. Should I take this internship? I'm homesick, lots of things. But what I have found is no matter what people come to me for, if you're authentic with them, then they can trust you to share their challenges and their journey. So what I try to tell my students now is I'm not guaranteeing that your journey will be easy. I'm guaranteed that I will be here as a resource to help you to navigate those difficult times. And I think that's what's most important. And what I find is even with my social media engagement, I have people on social media who will reach out to me, or YouTube. A young lady found my YouTube channel and said, I've never had a Black woman engineering professor, and I found your YouTube videos and I just wanted to talk to you. And that's sometimes they just want to talk to you, to know that there's somebody out there who is encouraging them and wants to see them succeed.
Yeah, you mentioned Mae Jemison and seeing people who look like you in leadership roles, or when you were coming through the educational system, teachers, professors, and others. How important is that? Having women of color, people of color, see people who look like them in leadership positions.
I think it is the beginning. It is the beginning. I have a blog post that says, you can be what you cannot see, but it's a lot easier to be what you can see, because that would have given me the motivation to go, I know I can do this. I know I can do this because I've seen someone else do it. I was actually a working professor when I first discovered Dr. Ayanna Howard, who was a very famous Black woman who was a roboticist and worked at NASA. And I was so happy to discover another Black woman roboticist out there that I drove from Nashville to Atlanta. She was at Georgia Tech just to meet her. So even as an engineering professor, I was still getting excited to see people who look like me and who were doing what I do.
As you look at overall, not just at Rose, but in the U.S. educational system in general, and in the engineering fields in general, how do you assess kind of the state of diversity in that field, which has been primarily a male-dominated field, certainly for a long time? How do you see things progressing, or do you see them progressing?
I do, but it's extremely slow. And I think there is progress being made, like I said, especially for women, but it is extremely slow. And that means we just have to keep going, right? We're going to be optimistic about it. We're not going to wring our hands. We're just going to keep coming up with innovative and novel ways to keep promoting STEM to all communities.
Much more ahead with Dr. Carlotta Berry from Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology. We'll talk about get her take on the state of technology, artificial intelligence, all those things we hear about. A little bit more about her background growing up in Nashville, Tennessee as well. That's when the Business and Beyond podcast returns.
At PNC Bank, we're committed to making a difference in the lives of our customers and communities by helping them move forward financially. As a Main Street bank, we try to do right by our customers with every encounter. Our local teams offer personalized financial advice to help guide you in making the best decision. We're proud to be part of your community. PNC Bank. See how we can make a difference for you at pnc.com. Copyright 2022, the PNC Financial Services Group, Inc., all rights reserved.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Dr. Carlotta Berry. She is a professor of electrical and computer engineering at Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology in Terre Haute. And doing so many things regarding equity and STEM and related fields there at Rose-Hulman and beyond. And importantly, as we mentioned in the first half, just named a Forbes 50 over 50 award winner. So quite an honor for her. Carlotta, technology, it's always a rapidly changing field. But these days with, robotics, artificial intelligence, there's so many things that seem to be moving so fast. What's your take on maybe the impact we might see or we are seeing here in Indiana, traditional manufacturing state? There's a lot of concern that AI, robotics, going to replace people. What's kind of your take on those areas and the impact here in Indiana?
Absolutely. So I do presentations on robotics and artificial intelligence. And one thing I will say is that robotics and AI are here to stay. I've had some people who say, we know there's some problems with AI, and so we just shouldn't use it and it should go away. Regardless of whether you use it or not, other people will. So it's better to be knowledgeable about it and know that there is bias in artificial intelligence against protected classes. So being aware of some of those and being in the forefront of addressing those needs is important. I think that when we talk about robotics and manufacturing, what's important to know is that industrial robotics are where robots actually got their beginning. So if there is a job that a robot is taking, typically those are defined as things that are dull, dirty, and dangerous, the 3 Ds of robotics. So what that robot is doing is something that you probably don't want a human doing anyway, because it's not good work for them. It's not safe. So it would be better for that human to be trained to be the robot operator and do something at a higher level that is probably safer for them, more enriching for them, and increasing their knowledge. So I think that is where we need to go. Instead of saying robots are taking our jobs, robots are elevating me to a better job, and we're going to let the robot do the menial task, which is what a robot is defined to be, a menial laborer, and let them take that over. Where artificial intelligence comes into play is the brain or controller of a robot is created with artificial intelligence. So we're hearing a lot in the media about the bad actors of artificial intelligence, like replacing someone's face or deep faking someone's voice. That's extremely bad. And that's why we need to have policy and ethics around how AI is being used. That's why organizations like the Algorithmic Justice League are doing that at the forefront. But I think it's most important to know that artificial intelligence is not going anywhere. So we all need to learn what it is not, and how it's used in a good way and in a bad way.
Yeah. Is AI, I'm assuming that's a big part of the curriculum there at Rose, and these students are coming out with a keen knowledge of AI because it's going to be part of their lives, really.
Absolutely. We have a multidisciplinary minor in robotics. I, with other faculty there, started it, and there are artificial intelligence courses in that curriculum. And AI is integrated into a lot of the computing classes, as well as my robotics classes anyway. It's kind of like you cannot disconnect the two, because if you're doing any kind of software that has any kind of learning or intelligence or that uses data in order to make decisions, we also have a data science minor. Artificial intelligence is evident in all of that course material. You cannot dissect them from each other.
The relationship between academia and industry has long been, I don't want to say in question, but what's the relationship between the two? Is academia giving industry what they need from a talent standpoint? Is evolving nature of technology of AI now, has that increased that collaboration or connection between academia and industry?
I think it's about the same. I think a lot of it is we have external advisory boards. Our students will go on internships and come back and tell the professors, hey, you're supposed to be teaching us this. I'm doing this on my internship. We've had alumni reach out to me, or who go on to grad school in robotics or artificial intelligence, and they'll reach back to me and say, hey, you're getting us ready for grad school. Teach more X or Y. So It's not even just industry, but also students who go on to graduate school and tell us there's something really hot right now happening in the research space. And as undergraduate educators, you need to help us get ready for that. So I've changed my classes based upon student alumni or something they've mentioned while they were on an internship.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier bias or biases inherent in artificial intelligence. Talk about that. What when you talk about bias in artificial intelligence, how does that manifest it?
So one of the examples I give is facial recognition. Coded Bias, the documentary was about that. And Joy Bunamawimi showed that the facial recognition algorithms did not recognize dark or brown faces. And so when she wanted to use it for a course project, she had to put on a white Halloween mask for it to track her face. So where the bias comes in is that even before it was ready for prime time, some police departments started using that same facial recognition technology with driver's licenses in order to find people who had committed crimes. And there are about 3 examples now, a couple in Michigan, of people who were arrested based upon the facial recognition for a crime that it was found that they later did not commit. One young lady was actually pregnant while she was in jail because her driver's license matched a grainy, camera from a crime. So that's an example of where AI is being used by people before it should be. And so a big part of that is making sure that you have a diverse data set that artificial intelligence has been trained on so that it can give reliable data, not just for white male faces, but for women as well. There are other examples of chatbots that did not recognize women's voices or people with accents. So because we are a diverse and global community, we have to make sure our artificial intelligence works for a wide swath of people. By having diverse engineering teams, there'll be someone in the room that goes, hey, we haven't made sure this works for me.
Yeah.
So that's another reason.
How, Carlotta, is you're getting young people interested or more interested in STEM in related fields? How do you do that? Is there a secret sauce to kind of getting kids engaged or more engaged in engineering?
I think a big part of that is coming at them from a lot of different perspectives. So I do children's books, I do podcasts, I do YouTube, hip hop, slam poetry. And by doing it from a lot of different perspectives, they don't always know they're doing STEM. One thing we've seen is that some young girls do not like being in robotics competition teams because they don't like the aggression of the battle bots or, bragging in the competition. So by saying, I started out doing Barbies, I had Barbie dolls, and my creative and curiosity came from designing new outfits for them or figuring out how to make my dream house or my Barbie car to go faster or look prettier. But I could still be an engineer because I was being creative and curious. So talking about sewing, talking about singing and art. So that's where the art comes in, because there's more than one way to get to engineering and be an engineer. So one way is when I talk to young people, tell me what you like. And I can show you something about robotics or STEM that relates to that. I think that's a big way of doing it and not thinking there's a cookie cutter way I have to get you into STEM.
Getting kids interested in STEM at a young age, I think, you hear over and over, is important. How young typically do kids get interested in engineering, and how young should they be interested? Very, very early in the process?
Well, I'm also the visiting scientist at the Children's Museum of Indianapolis, and I do programming there. And we have young people come in 1, 2, 3 years old. So whatever your age is, there should be something designed at that level to be appropriate for you. And as they grow, as I say, grow with my open source robots, it can become more or less complicated. So even at a very young age, if they're curious about something, I'll tell parents, you don't have to buy expensive toys. Have them do something at home, like they could do paperwork where they make a little paper dollhouse, but something where they're building and they're creating. And then as they get older, maybe to add in programming, add in some electronics, add in robots, etc. But as soon as they show any interest in creating or doing something from their curious mind, I say encourage it.
Did your curious mind lead to some of those things in Nashville way back when?
It did. I remember being young and playing with my Legos and Tinker Toys and blocks were my thing. But guess what? If I was home and I didn't have any of those, then I'd build a castle out of sheets and chairs. So that's what I mean. You don't always have to have a toy. I had a broom and a mop that I used to make a doll out of, and I would comb my mop's head, right? I would do her hair, right? So it doesn't matter. I was being creative and curious. Even if I had nothing else, going outside and running around and figuring out how to build something on the playground or fix something. And that grew as I got older. And I made an electronic circuit as one of my first science projects in the 5th grade. Wow. Then when I was in college, all my classmates, I wanted to be engineers. So they brought me all their broken stuff to fix. I had no clue what I was doing, but I tried anyway. I got a tape out of a boombox for one of my classmates, and she ran down the hall and told everyone I fixed her boombox because I'm an engineer. But being identified like that, even before you have the skill set, is a big part of your confidence.
What do you remember about growing up in Nashville?
A thing I remember the most is my mom was a kindergarten teacher, which sparked my love for kindergarten. As a member of the Red Cross, I would actually go and get high school credit by helping teach her classes, her kindergarten classes. And then in high school, not after I worked at fast food as well, but I went on to work for the Nashville newspaper. It was the Tennessean at the time. And I worked with the reporters to help file their stories. So all of that helps my academic journey and learning about writing and mentoring and connecting with people. And all those skills I still use to this day.
Yeah. A Spelman College and Georgia Tech, right? And I think there was a dual program, right, between Spelman and Georgia Tech that you took advantage of. Why that path? Did you consider any other schools, or was Spelman, was that the choice from day one?
Spelman was the choice from day one because there had been a young lady who was a few years ahead of me and went to Spelman, and she came back and she did an auditorium meeting with all of the female students and shared her, her experiences in college. And I remember looking at her going, oh my, because I was a very, very shy student. And I remember looking at her going, oh my God, she has it so together. She is so well put together. She's so confident. I want to have what she has. So I want to go to school where she goes to school. I remember recently one of my high school principals reached out to me when I got the Forbes 50 over 50, and she said, you're doing great work. And I wrote her back and said, what I remember about you is when I used to walk down the hallway with my head down, you used to stop me and say, I need you to lift your head up when you walk. And I think that was a big part of it, is seeing people who walked with their heads up and going, I want to be like them. And it was just lack of confidence and being shy.
Yeah. Yeah. Fast forward to today. What motivates you to keep doing what you're doing? Because you're obviously passionate about what you do, very hard worker, just to be a professor, but all the other things you're doing on top of that. What motivates you to keep doing all those things?
When I talk to one of my mentees or proteges, whether they're in a PhD program or undergraduate, and I hear them saying things like, man, I'm still one of 2 or 3 in class, and I still sometimes feel alone, I know it's time for me to keep going. When those stories stop, when those conversations stop, when other professors stop sharing with me some of their challenges, even being in academia, being presumed incompetent, having to work to get colleagues and students to call them doctor or professor instead of miss, I know that my work is not done. And I actually enjoy what I do. It's fun for me. Being a robotics engineer, designing robots, doing workshops. I did one for K through 12 teachers in computer science a couple of weeks ago, and seeing teachers go, oh my God, I didn't know I could do this. I can now go back and do it with my kids. Then I know I'm making a difference. More than the awards, it's about seeing people's faces light up, doing something they didn't know they could do before, or being encouraged to keep going in a way they didn't know they could before.
I'm sure you give a lot of advice to young women and underrepresented minorities as well who are looking at possible careers in engineering. But what would be, to kind of, in a nutshell, the advice you give to those people in terms of career advice and wanting to continue on that path?
I think something you said earlier, most importantly, get a mentor, get a role model. And it does not have to be same race, same gender, or similar age. You just need someone who is encouraging you to keep going forward. They talk about mentors, sponsors, advocates, people who will speak for you when you're not in the room, people who will support your mission financially, and people who will just be there for you to give advice. You may have a 360-degree mentoring circle of people for where you are, where you want to go, where you've been. So that is the most important. Someone who can speak to you about your work. Also having members of your community who know nothing about what you do and just want to be a listening ear for you. That would be like my mom or family members who don't really know what an engineer or engineering professor is or does, but are always like, we're proud of you and we want to see you to continue to go. I think more than anything else, if you have the diligence and the dedication, you can get there.
Words of wisdom, to be sure, Dr. Carlotta Berry. Hey, do you know yet when you're headed to New York for the Forbes 50 over 50?
There's one September 11th and there's one October 24th. I'm not sure what the difference is. I just got the email about one yesterday, but it is September and October of this fall for sure.
Well, that is quite an honor. Let us know. Maybe we'll talk to you, do a quick interview for TV or something from New York. I think that's quite an honor and very richly deserved as well. Really appreciate you taking the time to join us on the podcast, and really appreciate the impact you're making in Terre Haute and beyond, because it is substantial, and certainly Rose-Hulman and the Wabash Valley community, lucky to have you there.
All right. Thank you so much. And also, I wanted to bring up that Women in High Tech is going to have their 25th anniversary gala on October 3rd at the Indiana Roof Ballroom. And I want to thank them because they are the beginning of all of the awards I got when I got their Leading Light Award. And so I would be remiss if I did not also mention the great work that they do in the community in order to get the landscape of women represented in STEM to be equally inclusive to all.
I am glad you brought that up because you are indeed right. The Women in High Tech organization, so impactful for Indiana for all these years, and your Leading Light, You Inspire Me Award recipient. We may have talked to you after that. I can't remember, but
you're exactly right. We talked twice after my Mirror Award from TechPoint and after my Women in High Tech Leading Light Award. I did a talk at Women in High Tech earlier this year where I told them that they were the beginning of me being acknowledged for all of the work that I have done. And since getting that award, I have gotten Indiana Women of Influence. I think you and I talked around that time as well, and several other awards. But they were the first ones to acknowledge the efforts that I have done in helping to increase the numbers of engineers, scientists, technologists, et cetera. So the great work that they do here in Indiana has to be acknowledged.
Very good. I'm sure more awards in the offing as well. Dr. Carlotta Berry, Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right. And thank you for joining us on this episode of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. We are a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes and get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.